Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Al Johnson Show. Sorry about that. Thank you all for watching. Thank you all for being here. In case you didn't know, I am Al Johnson. And today, this is going to be a different type of reaction video that I'm going to do. As for this one, this is going to be what I hope is going to be an entertaining and informative video. And there will be things that I might agree or disagree with. So what we're looking at today is a video from this podcast called Vigilante Vibes, which is hosted by Megan Nicole, who has started a group called The Nerd Haven on Facebook, which I am a part of. And this is a particular one I wanted to react to because I wanted to see if I will agree or disagree with. She's going to be breaking down why, in her opinion, Charles Xavier from the X-Men is actually a villain and not the hero that he's been made out to be. Now, will there be things or points that say that I'll agree with or not? That remains to be seen. But this one has what's the phrase? You have my curiosity, now you have my interest. I think that's the right one. Anyway, I'm curious to see how this goes. And also, fair warning, if this might be a two-part video, so I might have to chop it up at certain points to make it a two-parter. But we'll get there when we get there, if we get there. But more likely we will. So anyway, let me load this up and let's see what Miss Megan Nicole has to say. So ladies and gentlemen, here is my reaction to the question. Is Charles Xavier really a villain? Here we go. Take it away, Megan.
And all the nerds in between. My name is Megan with Vigilante Vibes, and today I am coming to you with a big episode that I was planning on making for a long time, and I just finally did it. This is something I have been preaching about forever now. So, what are we talking about today? Charles Xavier. Charles Xavier is a villain, and I am sick of pretending he isn't. I'm sick of everyone pretending he is not. So we're going to talk about it. Before I get started, be sure to like and subscribe so you don't miss anything I put out, because I put out a whole bunch of stuff. There are a few things about the X-Men that just feel untouchable, and Professor Charles Xavier definitely feels like one of them. Pretty much every big X-Men story kicks off because of Xavier's dream of humans and mutants living together in peace, which is nice on paper. Wanting a fair, safe world for mutants is admirable. And for a long time, he was basically the ultimate mentor in the Marvel Universe. But I think with how hard we rely on Xavier's dream, we constantly come up with reasons to excuse his trashy behavior. He's way more controversial than most people realize. Xavier is so committed to making his dream survive that he's done some pretty questionable and horrible things behind the scenes to protect it. After being very experienced in the world of the X-Men, I'm here to say that Professor Xavier is a villain, and I am going to explain why. On one hand, yeah, Xavier deserves credit for a lot of the X-Men's wins, but on the other hand, he has also made life way harder for mutants than it ever needed to be. The clearest example is the Krakoa era. Krakoa was supposed to be this huge power move for mutant kind, their own nation, their own future. And Xavier built the whole thing on secrets and half-truths. He loves acting like he's the guy making the tough calls so nobody else has to do it. That is his thing. He loves it. But in reality, he keeps planting landmines under the world he's building, and when they explode, it's the X-Men who take the hit. By the end of Krakoa, after the anti-mutant Orcus initiative wiped the island out with a piece of Mr. Sinister stuck in his head, Xavier actually teamed up with the Sentinels in a scheme to trick them into destroying humanity just to buy the X-Men time. And that's not a minor lapse in judgment. That's a next level villainy. And the worst part, a lot of it traces back to Xavier playing dangerous games with mutant kind's enemies in the first place. He gave them the ammo they needed to hurt mutants on a scale other villains never managed. He's caused an unbelievable amount of suffering for his own people, and he still walks around thinking he was justified. Sure, villains like Magneto and Apocalypse have damaged mutant PR over the years, but they're not the public face of the mutant cause. Xavier is. He's inseparable from it. So when he does something shady, the whole mutant race gets blamed. At this point, I honestly don't even want to see him show up anymore, because whenever he does, you just know some elaborate scheme is coming that will blow up in everyone's faces. The X-Manhunt event even makes it clear that a chunk of the team sees him as a straight-up villain now. I know. How can a man that seeks out children to groom them into his child army possibly be a bad guy? Well, I'm here to tell you that's possible. But don't worry. If I don't have you convinced yet, I brought examples. How about we start with the Xavier protocols? The Xavier protocols were created by Charles Xavier as a sort of fail-safe device. Should he himself or one of the X-Men or one of their associates become a danger to humanity or life itself. There are over 200 entries, apparently one file for each of the X-Men, as well as the members of their many spin-off groups like New Mutants, X-Factor, X-Force. The information in the Xavier protocols is very much right to the point. Listed are not only the person's weaknesses, but also the quickest and most efficient way to take them out. You're supposed to be a father figure or a caretaker to these kids, and you have a cheat sheet on how to eliminate them.
Like Batman.
Another one. Professor X has never had a problem stepping away from the X-Men when something grabs his attention. Case in point, only a few years into the team's run, he straight up faked his own death and left his students to deal with everything alone in Uncanny X-Men number 42. He went underground to secretly prepare for the incoming Xenox alien invasion. While he was off playing chess master and hiding, a dying mutant shapeshifter named Changeling pretended to be Xavier and ended up getting killed by the villain Grotesque. Jean Grey knew the truth the whole time, but Xavier made her keep it secret. So the rest of the team thought their mentor was dead. They mourned him, and they even briefly broke up. Then, of course, Xavier eventually popped back up, and it explained everything to his understandably stunned students. Not long after, in Uncanny X-Men number 65, he helped stop the Xenox by telepathically linking every mind on Earth together. Big heroic moment? Sure. But it all started with him faking his death and emotionally wrecking his own team for the greater good, which is a classic Xavier move. How about Deadly Genesis? When the original X-Men were captured by the living island of Krakoa, Professor X famously put together a brand new squad, Wolverine, Nightcrawler, Storm, Colossus, to go rescue them. That's the version of the story everyone knows. But we don't find out until X-Men Deadly Genesis number 4. Before assembling that iconic team, Xavier secretly recruited a totally different group of young, inexperienced mutants with Myra McTaggart. It always goes back to Myra McTaggart, and I am sick of this woman. She is a number one problem, and it's not talked about enough, but we're not here to talk about her. And basically, he sent them on a suicide mission. They did manage to rescue Cyclops, but the rest of the team, including Cyclops' long-lost brother Vulcan, were believed to have died on their very first outing. When Cyclops made it back to the mansion, completely traumatized, Xavier helped by wiping his memories of Vulcan and the entire team. Years later, it turned out Vulcan had survived and came back insanely powerful and furious, ready to get revenge, rightfully so. Once everything came out, Cyclops was done. He kicked Xavier out of the X-Men, and honestly, how can you blame him? You can't.
I don't.
Or what about Wolverine? Wolverine's memories have always been a mess, but Professor X did not help. In fact, he made it worse almost right from the jump. When Logan first joined the X-Men, he had already been brainwashed by Romulus, one of the big shadowy figures behind the Weapon X program. In X-Men Original Sin number 1, it's revealed that during his early days with the team, Logan actually tried to kill Xavier because of that programming. Xavier stopped him telepathically, then basically said, "I still need a guy with your skill set." He went into Logan's mind, removed the mental conditioning, but because Wolverine's brain had already been tampered with so many times, that psychic surgery just caused even more holes in his memory. When Logan eventually found out what Xavier had done, he didn't go berserk. He actually forgave him, figuring he liked the hero he'd become well enough. He even trusted Xavier enough to ask him to do similar things for his own troubled son, Dakin. Still, another example of Xavier deciding he knows best when it comes to rewriting someone's mind. Yeah, there's a lot of instances where Xavier does something horrendous, horrible, just something usually against someone's consent, and it's okay because that person ends up joining an X team. The person forgives him. That person says, you probably know best. But in reality, that's invasive and that's rude. How about Krakoa? Xavier made plenty of sketchy calls while running Krakoa, like teaming up with Mr. Sinister of all people. But his worst moves came after Orcus attacked. Tipped off by a traitorous Myra, Orcus crashed a Hellfire Gala with Nimrod and a fleet of upgraded Stark Sentinels, and it was a full-on massacre. Instead of letting the X-Men fight back, Xavier telepathically froze them in place and surrendered. Then he forced most of the world's mutants to walk through mysterious portals to who knows where in X-Men Hellfire Gala number 1. While the remaining X-Men were scrambling to survive in the present, Xavier went to an even darker place. He traveled back in time, planning to take out a very young Myra before her mutant powers ever activated. He didn't go through with it. The fact that he was ready to erase a child from existence to fix his mistakes says a lot about where his head was at. How about the Danger Room? We all know the Danger Room where the X-Men would train, but what about when the Danger Room became self-aware and showed up as a full-on being called Danger in Astonishing X-Men? Xavier knew she was alive and just completely ignored her, enslaving her for years. Little to no surprise, Danger had enough. She attacked the X-Mansion, created a humanoid body, and went after Xavier for keeping her imprisoned. Are you still not convinced? Because don't worry, I have more. Another example. Let's talk about Xavier and his son David.
Legion.
Even though Professor X has spent his life mentoring young mutants and teaching them how to control their powers, he'll openly admit that he dropped the ball as a dad to David Haller, who's Legion, the Omega-level reality warper with a seriously fractured mind. David was born after a short relationship between Xavier and Gabrielle Haller, which is a gross story in itself. Slept with his patient, Gabrielle, after using his powers to pull her out of a catatonic state caused by SA, if you understand what I'm saying, as a child in a concentration camp, admitting to himself it was morally wrong. Then later, on admitting, he used his telepathy to make her have feelings for him. And the wild part is, Xavier didn't even know he had a son for more than a decade. By the time he found out, David had already gone through a traumatic event that triggered his mutant abilities and shattered his psyche into multiple personalities. When Legion first showed up in New Mutants number 26, Xavier tried to help him treat him. And the issue ends with Xavier promising he'll always be there for his son, which sounds great, right? But is that how it turned out? Absolutely not.
Not really.
And that's not even mentioning his very, very inappropriate feelings for a young Jean Grey, which I'm very happy the writers ditched that whole situation, but it should never have been brought up to begin with. But for clarity's sake, she was not the only student he was inappropriate with. In Micronauts and the X-Men number 4, when the Entity was now in control of Professor X's body back in the Macroverse, he essentially physically assaults SA's Danny Moonstar.
Wow.
He chides his own good side for denying him the pleasure of the pretty young playthings Xavier surrounds himself with, and then mentally gives the teenage girl a sensual caress across her very soul that leads her to collapse in the throes of indescribable pleasure. The scene evokes the kind of conditioning, grooming, and recruitment that child predators do to children. He says, if you are a good little girl and aid me in dominating the New Mutants, I will reward you with more of the same. In other words, using her to gain new victims of his lusts. And to put it plainly, the Entity did have control of his body, but the Entity is actually Charles' dark side running amok. So there's not many times I've read something in Marvel Comics that just hurt my stomach. Like, I